Welcome to our Boardroom Finance series. Today we are exploring what will shape finance from 2025 to 2030. I'm joined by an incredible panel. Mohit, who is the Executive Vice President, Business Engagement and Growth. Irene Teng, Executive Vice President, Global Markets. Venkkat Ramanan, Vice President, APAC Regional. And last but not the least, Sharma, CEO and co-founder, Pinaka AI, who is as well as ACMA and CGMA. Yes, we have a free-flowing conversation about so interconnected ideas, AI, geopolitics, ESG, and talent. What makes this discussion unique is that none of these topics can be discussed about in isolation. They are interconnected. So let's start. Let's start with geopolitics. Sam, from your work with the US Future of Finance Group, how are global power shifts reshaping finance strategies?
So it's interesting because obviously this year, with the new administration in the United States, tariffs and trade have been a top agenda, not just for the US, but for the world. And so the CFOs in our group are having to be very nimble with their supply chains and how they're thinking about it. They have to do more projections and all of that. So what I like to say is they were forged in the fun of COVID. So many of them have said, we already had to do this under a lot of stress when COVID hit. And so we've taken what we learned from that piece and now applying it to these tariffs. Now, the other point, which is kind of interesting because CFOs aren't always thinking about geopolitics. Yes, they might think about trade and everything, but not necessarily geopolitics. So at the Gartner CFO conference, 3,000 CFOs, our Mark Peterson, the vice president of our global advocacy, presented an update about what was happening in the new White House administration and all the tariffs going on. It was the highest rated session in the history of the conference, and they never had anything about geopolitics book. So what's that's telling me is that trend probably isn't going to stop, because as it's getting sorted out in this administration, the next administration could reverse it all. And other countries are doing their own stuff now. So everybody's in this global free-for-all, and all the companies are going to have to figure it out. So that's a big new idea that's happening. That's important. And it also emphasizes the CFO's role to be forward-looking, having to constantly project and say what's going to happen next, as opposed to worrying about what happened last week.
Thank you. Let's try something with it. And from the India perspective, how does that play out?
So recently there was a lot of discussion about how this is going to impact India, especially with the buying oil from Russia and European tariffs on this kind of volatile situation in the region. Again, on the one, it impacts in two counts. First is the trade, the balance of trade, how it exists between the two countries. Not just that, but considering that we have ESG, another interrelated topic. How this balance of trade is structured together on that globally as well, because we might be buying it, let's say, from a European nation, but ultimately selling it to Russia. And how do we clear that? So that's one part. Another part is the services economy. We take a lot of our GDP from the services economy. So far, the tariffs have impacted the goods. But the moment there is a switch on to services, effect, goods quota is not expected to be enough. This is going to impact hugely, especially for people who pride themselves in career themselves finance professionals, because probably 54% of people are working into the services sector, serving the global economies, and the biggest market, needless to say, United States of America. So there are multifaceted impacts. I know for sure for companies which are even keeping their tariffs, and later on, it is more like we're preparing this thing from a particular market, what is going to be impact on our margins. If tariff goes this much, what is it going to be? And least simulated or live with real-time data coming up from Greenberg and many other different systems.
Like the Bloomberg terminal? Like
this is one web terminal with integrations with Bloomberg.
So, fascinating. Irene, I'm going to pick your mind on talent, which is something very close to your heart. From a talent perspective, how do you see these geopolitical changes impacting, the new generation?
That's a very interesting question, Ajay. You see, like what Tom was saying earlier, geopolitics is not a distraction. Prior to that, we had called it the pandemic. But if you go before pandemic, if you look at the business world that we are operating in, it has always been a super upward.
Yeah.
volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So what has changed? For all finance professionals, they've been operating in that environment. But right now, post-COVID, with the geopolitics, obviously, the intensity has actually accelerated. So what I would say, finance professional today, what they need to do is to be able to operate in a different environment. They need to have more clearer context of use, the skills of cross-country, cross-cultural skills. You must not just look within the market that you're operating. You need to be very curious to what's happening in other markets. How would that actually affect me or my organization, for example? So going back, like what Paul was saying, Tom was saying this, the supply chain disruption, right? When it helps one country in the export. So as a finance professional, you need to have that concept of things that will actually make wealth planning. And again, financial professional right now, finance professional right now shouldn't be looking at just linear forecasting. You need to actually bring in a different perspective. Being more bantered in terms of having that ability to think strategically, right? You need to be able to anticipate the future. You need to be anticipating what's next. That will actually help you to steer the right decision making for the organization. Last but not least is the power of communication. CIMA, CGMA, previously they emphasized the four main core skills that every finance professional or every CGMA should have. The technical skills, the business acumen, the people skills, as well as the leadership skills. Now, they need to be able to have a strong communication skills. They need to connect the dots. They need to make what we call translate those data and report it to something relevant to be able to provide insights to the stakeholders that are working with, to the board they're working with, to the teams they're working with, both virtually and horizontally. So they need this so that they be able to steer the organization and support going to the direction of success within them. So just to cut everything short, they need to have that difference early on the game. Right. We work to be able to enter the future. Strategic thinking, customers, and once it product is capability to analytic effectively next week.
Right. So building basically from linearity to more exponentially thinking.
Exactly.
Thank you. Venkkat, on to you. As someone who has always had a strategic point of view, how should CFOs be preparing their teams for uncertainty?
Uncertainty is where we exist, right? So if I look at us, the way I've been parents, I have a 20-year-old daughter. When I'm at home, if I get a call from the school, I panic, right? What's this call going to be? So in my head, I go through, right, is something wrong with my daughter? If that's the case, what do? I had a call. How do I postpone it? What do I do next? Do I go and pick her up? How do I arrange? The first thing is there a hospital or anything close by? Because we go through multiple modeling in our heads, right? That's normal because world is not certain anymore. The way we look at it is finance has traditionally been a risk management practice, looking at risk management and planning risk and managing that. Now, you spoke about geopolitics. Mohit touched on the India impact. Tom spoke about the impact, the feedback come from the future of finance session. Irene spoke about the skills. Now, look at it in a way that geopolitics and the area of uncertainty only provides geo-opportunities and geo-potential for us to think differently. So a small example, how often do finance people do risk management? How often do you now take the finance team into a room and create a war environment? These three things are changing. What do we do? These four things are changing. What do we do? And do it often. Risk management to adaptive strategy. And taking that adaptive strategy to tell the CEO, if all of these things change and move, this is how we have to respond and start planning it early. Because never will a world be certain in the way it was. COVID taught that it's chaos.
Yep.
We have to prepare for the chaos before chaos prepares us.
Absolutely. Tom, on to you. Building on what Irene said about skills and skill building, what are you seeing globally in terms of how finance teams are adapting?
So I think there's two big pieces here. First of all, because of the acceleration, especially of AI, which is accelerating automation with finance dramatically, there's a need for finance folks that are moving up the value chain across the board, right? Away from transactions and more into strategic thinking. Finance planning and analysis is the buzzword we hear. Finance business partners. That requires new skills. So we see this focus on upskilling, reskilling, and a new word now, a new skill. So that's how the overarching piece. Now, by the way, the CGMA curriculum, which has been updated, has a lot of those new skills. But let's go to the one that we're seeing now. We call this a team-shaped profession. So think about our finance function, all of us in accounting and finance with the deep technical knowledge of the accounting and finance function. And then layer on top of that a crossbar, the T. That's the boundary crossing skills. They happen to be soft, or we call them success or power skills. And there's a bucket of the major pieces there, right? Strategic and critical thinking, always number one. Anticipation, which Irene was talking about. Anticipation and future focus would be number two. Collaboration and integration. And the third one, storytelling and communication, the fourth one. So those layer on top of all those deep technical. And that's what we're starting to see finance teams say, we need to have a program of integrating those skills in our teams as we're moving through. Basically, we're going to see continuous upskilling is what I think we're headed to.
Great. I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to the most favorite topic today of finance professionals and everybody else, Gen AI, right? And the impact of Gen AI on talent and, of course, transformation, whether it's digital or people, or skill building. Irene, from a perspective of AI replacing jobs, everybody's talking about whether you have to fear AI or you have to embrace AI. What's your view on actually what impact it's going to have on the finance role?
Sure. There's always this myth about how AI is going to replace our jobs. I think for the finance professional, that is definitely overstated. I don't think that's true. But what I actually see that AI actually enhances the role of the finance professional even further. So you see, from the finance role, previously before AI, without technology, there's a lot of mundane tasks that needs to be done. But a lot of those has been replaced by technology, right? Yeah. And now with AI, that's another elevated level where as a finance professional, you don't have to, go through all the data gathering and trying to make sense of everything. Sometimes, if you look at it right now, without AI, probably you need to spend days trying to make sense as to, okay, what this data is telling me, how do I actually analyze it, and how do I know that this is as accurate as it can be? With AI, they can actually do this job for you in just less than 2 minutes. So from a finance professional point of view, that frees you so much time where you can actually focus what's most important as your role as a CFO, as your role as a finance business partner, to focus on the insights, building that strategic thinking, really focusing on what's important for decision making for the organization. That's most important. So I guess for all the finance professionals out there, play around with AI, get to learn more about AI and how AI can actually enhance your role as a finance professional. But having said that, I think it is very important that as a finance professional, you need to know what are the questions that you need to ask when you use AI. How do you actually frame the prompt, right, in a very effective way? And then even that AI give you the output, do challenge the output. Right. Because at the end of the day, finance professional, the ethical reasoning to the output is still at most highest level.
So what I understand is don't trust AI absolutely blindly, right? And don't fear AI. Fear the people who embrace AI because they are the ones who are going to replace your job.
Yeah. There's one thing that AI can replace though, the human skills.
Yeah.
So the communication part, that's the humans, right?
Absolutely.
Communication skills, your strategic thinking skills, and as I said, the ethical reasoning. AI doesn't know that. but the finance professional, they do.
Insightful. Tom, does that align with what you're seeing with the work that you do with the future of finance?
Big word analysis. So just think about this though. It really hit our future finance group just 2 years ago, right? AI ChatGPT 2022 is only a little bit over 2 years old. So it's just hard to believe how much our conversation has had to shift to deal with that. That's how fast everything's accelerating. But everything Irene says is absolutely right. And that's what our finance teams are saying. So we're starting to see the beginning of adoption, not wide scale yet. We're beginning to pilots and start to play around with it, but it's on every CFO's agenda as one of the top things that they're dealing with. And so I think it's going to continue at that pace. I mean, the same thing, I think it's going to be you and AI replacing someone that doesn't think they're dying.
Are you seeing that, Mohit, also in India?
So India is still at a very early stage from the standpoint of AI journey and revolution. Obviously, people are playing with a lot of these new tools like ChatGPT and all that. But especially from a technology development standpoint, there is already a lot of work happening, but primarily for onshore customers and clients. From an India standpoint, it is going to take a while because I have had opportunities where we have something like VAT in India. It's called goods and services tax. Okay. So usually the goods and services tax, it's like an input tax. You put an input, apply it on output and you take the input as a credit. That is the system. But if there is any issue with calculations, you get notifications from the taxation authorities. So very recently, one of the biggest goods and services tax expert, who is a good friend of mine, he reached out to me saying, okay, I want to build up an AI, because usually what happens once a business gets a notice from the tax authority, it takes them a couple of weeks in order to get the first draft of the response ready, because there is a human involved. He said, I'm going to charge hardly less than $1 for every single query. Build me a ChatGPT type of tax GPT engine. So I upload my notice. It has access to all the case data. It has access to all the data that exists around the tax law. So it is able to get my first draft within seconds. And you know the interesting part, within a span of 2 to 3 months, this is possible to do. So this is the maturity. So India is taking its own baby steps into it. But still, considering the kind of developments that are happening, people are making complete financial analysis comparisons to decide their next investment hedge. There is a metric level conversation people are able to establish with the data and application, because that's the intent of this entire scale, that you can talk to your data. And that's where what Irene said comes into the picture, that you really need good conversational skills if tomorrow in an uncertain environment, you are the bearer of the good news and the bad news. So you really need certain skills in your environment. Completely agree with Tom that base level accounting skills, debit and credit, I know depreciation and amortization well, it's irrelevant, and it's going to be irrelevant very soon. I'm already seeing in some regions, maybe it is my observation only because I work with people across the globe. I am seeing it already in Middle East. A lot of the accountants are showing open to work on their LinkedIn profiles. And I'm seeing it consistently because it's coming from one region. This guy was into a finance and accounting role, and this is happening. Though there might not be any official data, but you must understand it. Technology as a lever of change is penetrating our workplace much faster than we originally anticipated. So it's getting there much faster. You can build it all along.
Absolutely. Also, what you spoke about, the tax, the software which the tax authority is asking you to build, that's going to be a force multiplier.
Indeed. Try to see. I mean, it's not going to make maybe accountants redundant, but definitely some lawyers.
Right. So, Venkkat, Irene mentioned about the human element, which is very, very pertinent and very important. From a strategic implementation standpoint, how do you balance AI efficiency along with the human element?
It all goes back to what are you using AI for? At a conference I sat and one of a board member said, we always start with mindset, skill sets, and then we look at tool sets. He said the problem was many of the organizations are starting to ask AI as a tool. And he said, no, mindset has to change. Look at AI as a colleague, not a tool anymore. So look at us, right? In finance professionals, 60% of our time was on data gathering and 40% time on analysis. Now what we do is Let AI gather the data and humans ask different questions, to your point. So I think from a perspective of how we look at it, we need to think differently. Know that AI amplifies our thoughts. It promotes creativity and innovation and thinking. And in boardroom levels, now they need to look at that. Look, the top line has to grow. That's an investor requirement. The bottom line, in terms of our cost efficiencies, need to multiply. How can we use AI to support on that? So for me, it is about a partnership in terms of AI and humans. It is a mindset shift that not just CEOs or boards need to have. It is the entire organization looking at it from that perspective. Finally, this is the problem statement that we see. To your point, Mohit, I went through my accounting program. I had to memorize standards.
Yes.
I didn't know what the heck the standards meant. So capitalization, amortization, memorize the standard. Now IFRS 15, revenue recognition, we memorize the standards. Now it's about asking what the standards are to do. We're producing too many people with redundant skills right now who are coming in. The opportunity is to provide AI and develop the training around prompt engineering, supporting the business and making it a strategic initiative.
I have just one small addition to what Venkkat said. Prompt engineering is used just like people use any common phrase. It's just like catchphrase. But the prompt engineering for, let's say, an engineer who is doing some vibe coding and the prompt engineer for a financial analyst, it's two different grades altogether.
100%.
People don't realize that. So it can be an extremely powerful segue. You need to know where and how to use it, right? So you can eliminate a lot of the redundancy in your work using just one simple skills. And the interesting part is you can save a library of prompts, so you don't even have to type it again. So it is just like a button on the side. Do it again.
Something interesting a friend said. He has two Gen AI tools. He used one Gen AI tool to generate prompts to use on the other one.
Yeah.
And that's
because there are some Gen AI tools which are better at doing that.
Absolutely.
So it's no more about man versus machine, it's man with machine.
Partnerships.
Absolutely. Thank you, Venkkat. Tom, any governance frameworks you're seeing that work well for this transition?
I think what we're seeing, the biggest thing, we're starting to see any of the CFOs are actually leading for AI initiative in their companies. And that's because they have a command of all of the data and the security that goes with that data. So even though you might think IT would be the natural one, it's often in the CFO office. Now, the other part of it is that they create a cross-functional team with the other big parts of the organization, marketing, sales, operations, and that group collectively then starts to set the governance protocol. In fact, that's what we're doing at the association as we speak, beginning to put back into effect. That's how they're managing it in this environment that we're in. And then the only other thing I would say, I've seen some creative cases where they were doing like contests with their AI and their finance team to do either prompt the funds or the other one is putting a poll and saying who's got use cases. And they started to put incentives around it. And they were tracking all these ideas and then now they're starting to implement them. But that's getting people to start moving on AI in a fun, safe way. And they're generating lots of critical productivity pieces that are coming to all these ideas from their group. That's the other key thing I see that's going on.
Fascinating. I'm going to shift the conversation to ESG and, of course, the strategy and its impact on talent, skills, and, of course, stakeholders, all kinds of investors, consumers and consumers. Venkkat, this is our third theme, and you've been very vocal about ESG as a strategic lever in finance. How does this connect to talent and capability building that we've been discussing all around?
It's current generation, right? They demand more organizations in terms of what impact and what purpose are they having. And that is driving a different way of thinking in terms of how you look at changes in demographics. You look at changes in expectations of investors. Investors are no more the traditional investors who are white-haired, grayed, who are looking at different ROI measurements in terms of your bottom line and your top line. But they are looking at in terms of what are you bringing in terms of the social costs, so the environmental issues that you're promoting, or around governance questioning. Now, think about an organization and think about a young set of talent. if you're disrupted through supply chain, we just spoke about environments around supply chain and geopolitics and the uncertainty that relates to that. You can have a young group of people who are seated there thinking about, right, let's model this. We depend on raw materials coming from a specific country that is about 400, 500 kilometers away. Carbon footprint is there. That's fine. Rain, floods take place in that region. Affects production, affects output, affects raw material distribution, affects your manufacturing. Then you look at shifting it somewhere close by. Cost of acquiring the product will change. Quality of the product might be different. You bring it, you produce it, you have recalls that affect it. The younger generation might look at it and they have access to data. They refine technology differently and their critical thinking and creativity is different. They say, you know what? There's a better way to do it just 10 kilometers away. There's a village out there that's really looking for talent development, blue collar. We can train them on manufacturing. We can give them components in terms of how to develop the raw materials. Let them supply it for us. So it's about going back to that thing, Ajay. ESG as a strategy is critical. The generation demands it. Investors are looking at it. Society as a large are judging us in terms of the decisions and the choices that we take in terms of just purely pushing in terms of our top line.
Absolutely. Whatever you just said completely resonates because I have a 16-year-old son who used to love wearing Levi's jeans. He doesn't wear Levi's anymore. He wears a local brand which is produced somewhere in Karnataka, which publishes on its website the amount of water that it takes to produce the pair of jeans. So what you're saying is absolutely right. Gen Z has no patience. They are embracing ESG faster than anybody else.
And doesn't your son influence your purchasing decisions as well?
Absolutely. I've started wearing their jeans too.
As well, right?
Right. Thank you. Tom, globally, how are you seeing finance teams restructure to handle ESG, and its implications? I know that the new administration in your part of the world is not so gung-ho about that, but how are you seeing that companies address that?
Say, despite the anti-AI piece of our administration, all of our major corporations have not given up on any of that. They're starting to call it different things, like inclusivity is a word starting to show up. So they're avoiding the hot words that are in the press and going into, but they're still doing their ESG sustainability projects. The other thing we're starting to see now is the emergence of what I want to call the ESG controller. So they're taking controllers in the US with the public accounting SEC environment, right? They're taking those controllers that did Sarbanes-Oxley with that big, deep skill set on control and testing and reporting, and they're making them dedicated to ESG, which is kind of neat. So that's a whole new emerging kind of reporting trend inside the public companies in the United States. But that shows their commitment to this, and I think that's continuing, which is exciting.
Interesting. We're seeing how these themes interconnect. Venkkat, how do you quantify ESG performance in a way that boards can understand?
Right. Well, they ask you immediately when you present something typically, and when a CFO presents, what's the famous 3-letter word that they ask? ROI. And it always has to be tangible. It doesn't need to be tangible anymore. No, we are in the whole scope of intangibles. We are looking at value creation. We are looking at value preservation. So for me, when you look at it, the story that you're able to talk about at board levels and really specifying is around what value we are creating. I mean, most critical aspects of controllers and finance professionals at large may not be CIMA, CGMAs, is that we know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Right? So when we are talking at board levels, I think we just need to expand our conversation to say, this is the immediate investment on these things, but the intangible benefit and the value, the long-term value around these things will change. And Tom, you saw it in the past couple of days when conversation, finance professionals in this room and engaging you on the Rise 2040, were talking about exactly that, the value creation side of things.
Yeah, you're right. It's moving, and it's moving fast, and it's exciting because it's a lot more rewarding be working on the value creation side than running around trying to track.
Absolutely. And since Gartner had taken out the report 20 years back, completely the value of companies has shifted from the tangibles to the intangibles. We're seeing that. Let's bring all this together. When we talk about geopolitics, AI, ESG, it has an impact on the future finance professional. Irene, considering everything that we've discussed, what does the future finance professional look like today? Superman?
Well, going back to what Tom said earlier, the T model. I think that's what the future of our finance profession should be. Having AI as our best friend, right? Being part of not just at work, but at our personal daily lives. You know that technology is very much part of our lives. So I would say that the future of our finance professional, they are definitely a strategic thinker. They're definitely that. And of course, they are a strong communicator. But most importantly is they are a strategic problem solver. Now, the uncertainties or the disruption will not stop. It will continue, it will keep on coming, and it can come in even a bigger form. So all our finance professionals, they need to continue to learn. They got to relearn as leaders, because they need to continue equipping them with all the knowledge and the skills required. My biggest advice to the finance professional out there is they need to get comfortable with technology, I think. Yeah.
And uncertainty as well.
Yes.
It's normal.
Yeah.
No.
And going back to what you said just now about how they think AI will replace a job, I think they need to get comfortable with technology, comfortable with AI. If they can do that so easily in their personal life, like how they adopt easily with smartphones, right? It wasn't difficult for people to to use and adopt embracing a smartphone, and everyone has one smartphone. So how is it difficult for them to actually adopt AI as part of their lives, especially as part of their career?
Absolutely. Tom, from a global learning perspective, how should organizations be thinking about, one is attracting talent and retaining talent?
So I think if you go back to all these topics, right? ESG, AI, technology, and talent, adopting a forward-looking perspective in the finance team, you will have no problem attracting talent. And if you're providing the upskilling to them, they will go on that journey with you because they know you're trying to make them better and not replace them. And in fact, most of the big corporates that we're working with, they're saying, we're not going to use AI to replace our people. We're going to use it to replace future people that we will need. So there will be a reduction in some of that entry-level piece in the future. But for now, they're all equipping their finance teams with the skills that Irene just talked about, working with the AI from that standpoint. And I think the other part is we're really moving from what I like to say a past tense profession, focusing on a hindsight, to a future tense profession, looking out the windshield and saying what's going to happen. That's a lot more exciting to be a finance professional in today's environment. Right.
Interesting. Do you see that resonate with the professionals in the Indian market?
I would say so. Especially, I'll pick two component parts to it. So there have been instances where we are reading or we are experiencing, let's say accountants, they had a kind of a mundane routine job, process invoices, pass journal entries and all of that stuff. They were given some Copilot access and they started building their vibe-coded applications in Microsoft Power Apps. It was part of the authorized subscription framework, but what they did was simply it reduced their work. So this is where what Irene said around storytelling, conversation, communication skills. This becomes important because these individuals, in their case, they were able to articulate their needs and expectations in order to build an entire short application bot around it and reduce their own workload or improve the work quality. That's one part. And we are seeing that in India. Another aspect I will look at it, picking up from what Tom said, looking at the windshield is better than looking at the side view mirror, right? It's the reality. So in Pinaka also, what we are doing is we are trying to make it a very predictive kind of environment for finance function. That instead of being reactive, be proactive. Don't act when something has gone wrong. Anticipate that, flag it, and use it better. Interestingly, we targeted US market where obviously conversations are on, Europe as well. We got our first two opportunities in India. Mm-hmm. That was very surprising and interesting to us. We were not very bullish on India. And that gave us that there is a phenomenal hunger and appetite to do the next best thing, to make finance proactive and predictive rather than just operating it in a very reactive and affected fashion.
So more anticipatory than reactionary.
Always on the
Right.
edge, looking into the future. So I think in one of the discussions earlier with Tom, he mentioned about ability of the accountant to look forward. Right. So AI as a technology lever allows the accountant to look forward and anticipate things and plan accordingly. So that's where I think the strategic lever also comes into the picture. In future, I see every finance professional to behave like a CFO because of the T model that Tom talked about.
Right.
That is needed. Right now, you cannot be the best invoice processor in the world. You have to know what happens in FCMA, what R2R guys are doing, what others are doing into the business. That is much more needed. So we are here.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I want each one of you to give a key insight for finance leaders preparing for 2025 to 30 and beyond. What would your key takeaway for them be? Starting with Tom.
I think it's two parts, right? You gotta embrace the technology. You've got to get into AI, adopt it, and you need to understand it and help deploy it inside your institution. And at the same time, upskill and reskill your team so that they've got those storytelling skills, those strategic thinkings, and those anticipatory skills, so you can add value to your company. Otherwise, AI is going to disrupt you.
Irene? Well, you know that, as I mentioned earlier, disruption is not going to stop, right? There's going to be more uncertainty coming our way. So for the finance professionals, you just got to continue to unlearn, relearn, and learn, right? And most importantly is make AI your best friend. And most importantly is that being a leader, do know that you are not just a bean counter or the one that just crunching the numbers. You are now the decision shaper. You are working side by side with the business leader. So if you're a CFO, you're standing side by side with the CEO. That's the role of our future professional. And of course, they need to continue to be the best storyteller. Whether just now we're talking about ESG, you need to tell the world that your company is not just about P&L, it's not just about profitability, but what value are you creating and bringing to the community, to the world. That story has to be told. And you as a finance professional is the best person to connect the dots and to tell.
They need to be a co-pilot to the pilot. Right. Mohit?
I would say AI is a new ally for the finance professionals. For all the finance professionals looking forward to it, AI is your new ally. Rather than looking at it as a competition, look at it more from a collaboration standpoint. So if you have AI, what would be the value that you can add to the business and drive the change from there? And whatever is needed can be there. Like vibe coding has become like a miracle for the Gen Z kids. They are able to do crazy amount of stuff with that. I know kids who are creating their own games and then playing it and then destroying them so that others don't get a chance to play it. So this is the new world. Make AI your new ally. Think of finance, your role as in finance as a trainer to the AI, so that you can leave the transactional stuff onto the AI and you decide which is the transaction that needs to be done. So rather than being the person who is looking out in the world to find the next best supplier, like the example which Venkkat took, leave the responsibility to AI and you evaluate which is the best supplier. So what kind of maturity and poise you would need for that role? Right now, till now, transactional was working. In the future, it won't. Just processing a transaction cannot be a skill set.
So you heard the three speakers who excellently coined it. You had to be a co-pilot to the pilot. If you're not, the CFO is a very expensive scope. That's one key aspect. CFOs don't manage cash; they manage positivity. We can't create people who are CFNO, as in NO. We are creating CFANOW. And here's the point for me to sum it up more than anything else. Finance is the most trusted profession that exists. Using AI in terms of rebranding the skills and what we do, using wider capabilities and skill sets across the T-shaped profession in any room entire leadership team sits, everyone looks at the CFO to be the trusted business. Trust will never change from 2025 to 2030 or 2040. We saw in the feedback, the finance professional will continue to bring trust. The problem is trust is not the only thing to bring.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a fantastic session. What strikes me is that how interconnected these themes are, whether it's AI, ESG, talent, or Gen AI, and how we cannot develop future finance professionals without really understanding each of these, whether in isolation or together. Thank you so much. I'm sure the viewers will have a lot of valuable stuff to take from this conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it as much. Thank you.
And you were incredibly good at moderating the session.
One
Thank
take.
you, Ajay. Well done. Well done.